Hello, YouTube. Me and Naomi are back with another reaction. All right, that's not really how I talk. Thank you for joining us. We have another Mr. Ballin video.
Mr. Ballin.
Ballin.
You like my dunk? It wasn't a dunk.
You dunked?
I don't know.
I did not know that was a dunk.
It was a shot.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Check this out. We are doing more Mr. Ballin. We have did it. We kind of got away from it, but I like the stories. The guy is an awesome storyteller. Be sure to like the video, subscribe. Also, be on the lookout and search for the playlist. It should be in the description somewhere. You know how people do the box. It ain't gonna never show up. But I have a playlist for Mr. Ballin that I'm creating right now. So be sure to check that out. Maybe we'll do it on a certain day or something. If you want to see Mr. Ballin maybe drop like Wednesday nights or something, let me know in the comments. But he has a lot of content, and I would love to hear those stories. How would you think, Naomi?
I agree.
She might not be there. Intro!
Yeah, you never flew private plane, now your eyes open wide up in Paris. Yeah, you ain't never been from the coast on a yacht to an island. Yeah.
All right, we back. So this video right here is about she made one of the worst decisions ever. What could that decision be? Let's get right into it. I'm feeling civilized as hell. All right, here we go. Ballin. Okay, he's not talking?
He is.
All right, it's cool. It's cool. It happens. This happens, you know. Technical difficulties. Okay, hold on 1 second. A little bit more. We're gonna go back and see what's wrong. What's actually wrong with it? Okay, got you. Right here. Choom, choom. Bam. Boom. Nothing. There we go. All right, so we're going to go back again. All right, you ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
There are two elements of today's story that are bound to shock you. The first is just, how could anyone allow this to happen? It's so awful. How could you do that? And then the second is just the severity of the punishment that was handed down for it. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. If that's of interest to you, please hold the like button at gunpoint and force them to walk through puddles in their socks. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
We
all right, let's
dropping
get
it
into
weekly.
today's story.
Let's go, Ballin. I got excited for that.
Ooh, spooky.
The man in Cobb Harbor. The man in Cobb Harbor.
In 2001, Greg Biggs was a 37-year-old self-employed bricklayer who was living in a homeless shelter in Fort Worth, Texas. He was also the father of one child. He had an 18-year-old son named Brandon who lived with Greg's ex-wife. Despite not...
You got the creepiest pictures of people.
Yeah, Mr. Ballin, you do be picking it. I don't know if the internet just sometimes the pictures be a little creepy or whatever, but we don't know yet. Maybe because we expecting creepy. It might not be creepy. It might be really good people. Hold on, let's see.
Living with his son while his son grew up, Greg had always made a point of spending lots of time with Brandon, and so over the years, they had become quite close. But besides his son, Greg really struggled to build meaningful long-term relationships with other people. It was like no matter how friendly and outgoing he was, people would just come into Greg's life and would leave very, very quickly. This made Greg, who always had struggled with his mental health, feel very isolated and lonely.
Man. Greg, I can already tell right now, blood and guts. Blood and guts are Bundy. I know blood and guts when I hear blood and guts. That man will start killing. Every time somebody would treat it like that, Naomi, they just get the Yemen. They just get the Yemen. Oh, man, here we go.
Not human.
And desperate for human interaction. And so on the rare occasion where people did come into Greg's life, a new friend or a new love interest, he was always so excited to try to please them and keep them around that he would often go overboard with his generosity and his willingness to do things for these people, to the point where he really set himself up for being taken advantage of. Case in point, 2 years earlier, a woman had kind of suddenly come into Greg's life, and Greg very quickly fell in love with her. And early on in their relationship, this woman tells Greg that she's struggling financially. And without any hesitation, Greg started giving her all of his...
Oh, Greg tricking. See, man, this don't end good. She took advantage of Greg, and Greg started tricking that bag. He was laying bricks. They paid him as the bricklayer. He got that Mason money. You know what I'm saying? Baby Illuminati. He ain't getting that money, man. And that's this girl that came and just took advantage of that. That's why I should have known where the generosity going. He tricking the bag. Come on.
Money. Now, Greg was not a wealthy man, not by a long shot, and so before long, he had literally given this woman all of his money to the point where Greg could no longer make truck payments, he couldn't make house payments, and so his vehicle and his home were repossessed. And then after he's suddenly homeless and destitute, this woman who he's given all his money to, she also disappears. But despite being in this horrible situation of sudden homelessness, Greg made the best of it. Anytime Greg was not working, he would be trying to make plans with his son Brandon to go walk around the mall downtown or go see a cheap afternoon movie. Times were definitely tough for Greg, but Greg stayed positive. He was a forever optimist, and he did this by focusing on the future. He was certain if he could just land a few more good-paying gigs, he could make that extra cash and finally buy a home again and buy a vehicle again and
That don't look like a mugshot. So Greg might still be, I don't know. It don't look like a mugshot. So maybe it ain't blood and guts. I don't know. Let's see.
finally kind of get his life back together. But unfortunately, he would never get that chance. On the morning of October 27th, 2001, two men called the Fort Worth Police Department to report having seen something suspicious on a park bench inside of Cobb Park. Cobb Park is this big public park with playgrounds and walking trails and fields. And at the time, Cobb Park was not considered a very safe place to be.
That's not in Cobb County, Naomi. That's in Fort Worth, Texas.
It did make me think of Cobb County.
I did think of Cobb County as well.
I feel like you did.
Yeah.
Especially after hours. There was lots of shady people in the park. So when the Fort Worth Police Department gets a call about something shady happening in Cobb Park, they aren't surprised. And so they dispatch a single detective to go over to the park and meet these two guys and see whatever suspicious thing is on this park bench.
Shot him
and so
for
this
sleep.
detective, he goes over to the gates of Cobb Park, he meets these two guys, and they kind of explain what they saw. They give him directions to this bench, and then he thanks them. He hops back in his cruiser, he drives through the gates, and he starts driving down the trail, and then he pulls off and parks his cruiser, knowing that the bench in question is right around the corner, maybe 200 or 300 feet away. And so he parks his cruiser, he gets out, and he starts walking on this cement path. And as he's walking, he can't see the bench yet, but as he's walking, he sees there are deep tire tracks in the grass and mud off to the right side of the walking path. So he's mentally kind of taking note that somebody had been driving inside the park fairly recently off the trail. And so he keeps on walking, and he begins to make that turn, and he sees up ahead the bench in question, and he can clearly see these deep tire tracks go right up to the bench. And then as he begins to make that turn, and he's maybe 30 or 40 feet away, he can actually see what's on this bench, and you can see this big lump that's kind of wrapped up in what looks like a rug or a blanket. And then as he gets closer and closer, he can finally see that very clearly there is a person inside of this blanket that's kind of laying out on this bench. And when he's about 10 or 15 feet away, he can see it's a man, and this man is clearly deceased.
Oh,
So
he
this detective-
dead. I knew he was dead, Naomi. The man out of there.
He's deceased.
Oh, Rick and Mortis, man. No, Ricky. Come on.
He walks right over to the bench, and he's looking down at this body, and he can see the right arm on this guy is very badly broken, and his right leg is also very badly broken. And then his left leg is not only broken, but it's been partially amputated. In fact, the left leg is barely hanging on. And so this detective, he's looking at this guy thinking, okay, this person must have gotten wrapped up in the shady criminal dealings that are known to take place in Cobb Park, and somebody beat him to death, or they beat him and then shot him to death. But as he's looking at the body, despite these extensive injuries, the bruising on his body was not consistent with someone who had been beaten to death. And in terms of potentially being shot to death, he began looking at the body, and from where he was standing, he could not see an entrance or an exit wound of a bullet. And so stumped, the detective steps back and is just kind of pondering what he's looking at when he realizes there's very little blood anywhere near the bench or on the body. And considering the left leg has been nearly amputated, you would think there would be lots and lots of blood, but there wasn't. And so
Somebody drained that man. They drained
Or
him
they
and put
killed
him
him
there.
somewhere else.
That's what I'm saying. They killed him and they drained him.
What do you mean drained?
They let a man drain because the man ain't got no blood. If something amputated, it's gonna be some blood.
I mean, that don't mean he don't have any blood. It's just not there at the
Is
scene.
why wouldn't it be no blood? Because he been drained.
Because they killed him somewhere else.
Drained him.
Okay.
They wrung him out like a rag. That's messed up, bro. And it's the nice dude, man, the optimistic one.
What What nice guy?
The one they was talking about at the beginning. This is the one that they found dead.
But we don't know that, right?
We don't know, but we know.
Okay.
Because he said until the day it came to an end. So that means it's him.
Yes.
That indicated to the detective that his injuries had to have been sustained elsewhere. And so this detective, he calls in backup, and more detectives show up, and they're all kind of looking at the scene, and the working theory became, okay, this guy got killed outside of the park. We don't know how he got killed. It looks like some sort of blunt force trauma, but somehow he gets killed outside of the park, and then his killers, they drive him into Cobb Park, which is why you have those deep tire tracks.
But I'm with you, but they drained him wherever they killed him at. I thought he was going to say drain, but he said drove.
At the murder scene.
Yeah, still there. in the drain.
On the right side of the path, and they dump him on this bench. Later that day, the medical examiner would come out and positively identify the body as belonging to Greg Biggs. The same day that Greg was found, the police went out and began their investigation, and they started by interviewing people that had been in Cobb Park either that day or in recent days, and they also interviewed known criminals that they knew went into Cobb Park, and they reviewed CCTV footage both in the park and outside of the park. But no one knew anything about what happened to Greg, and the footage didn't show them anything interesting. And so very quickly, Greg's case began to languish, and no one knew what to make of it. Then, in February of 2002, so roughly 4 months after Greg was found, the Fort Worth Police Department received a phone call. It was from this young woman named Miranda Daniel, and she said, "I know what happened to the man in Cobb Park."
Oh, man. Somebody know. That's a scary girl.
Well, the girl he was dating, they said she made the worst decision.
I don't know if that's the girl he was dating. That's just a thumbnail.
I mean, I have a pretty.
Yeah, let's see.
It's a good chance.
The one that he was tricked. Oh, man.
And the story she would tell them at first was so hard to believe that the Fort Worth Police Department weren't sure if this was a prank or not. But when they followed up on her lead and they went to a very specific address that she had mentioned, they realized she was telling the truth. This is the unbelievable true story of what happened to Greg Biggs. On the evening of October 25th, 2001, so 36 hours before Greg was found in Cobb Park, 25-year-old nurse's assistant, Shantae Mallard, arrived at her friend's apartment in Fort Worth, Texas. Her friend was named Tittalisi Rice. She went by T-Fry. Shantae was from a very loving and stable household in Fort Worth, Texas. Her parents had raised her to be kind to other people and to always work hard and to stay out of trouble. And by and large, Shantae acted accordingly. But in her late teens and early 20s, Shantae began to secretly rebel against her parents. On the surface, when she was around her parents and her family, she was the goody two-shoes that always followed the rules. But when she was away from her family, specifically when she was with T-Fry, she would let her wild, rebellious side out. The two friends had met in 1999 at a nursing home where they both worked as nursing assistants.
She turned up at the nursing home? She can't be turned up at the nursing home, man. That's illegal.
T-Fry had just gotten out of this very toxic marriage, and so when she met Shantae, she was actively looking for someone to go out and party with and go be free and meet other new people. And Shantae, when she's meeting T-Fry, she didn't necessarily know she wanted to do those things, but being around T-Fry, it was like this whole other side of life was opened up to her, and suddenly all she wanted was to go cut loose with T-Fry. And so very quickly,
we call those late bloomers. Late bloomers can be the worst ones in life. Well, late bloomers, man, you wait till you're 47 and now you're like, man, I want to start kicking it. Now you kick it every second of the damn day.
These two women really connected over their mutual desire to go have fun at any cost. And before long, they were not only drinking and doing drugs and partying on the weekends, but they were also getting high before work, which meant they were treating patients high. So with that in mind, fast forward back to October 25th, and Shantae has just arrived at T-Fry's apartment. And so Shantae, she goes up to T-Fry's apartment, and the two start drinking some alcohol, and they start smoking some weed, and they split an ecstasy pill. Ecstasy is a big party drug. It's kind of like a cross between being a stimulant and a psychedelic. And so after these two women are fairly buzzed on these different substances and they're feeling ready to go, they leave T-Fry's apartment, they go down and they climb into Shantae's car. And Shantae drives the two of them to a local club called Joe's Big Bamboo. And so the plan was they were going to meet this guy named Cleet Jackson, who was Shantae's love interest. And the plan was they would hang out at the club with Cleet, and then at the end of the night, they would all leave, and Shantae Shantae and Cleet were going to spend the night together. And so Shantae and T-Fry, they arrive in the parking lot of Joe's Big Bamboo. They park their car, they get out, and they meet up with Cleet, who was outside of the club. And the trio kind of sneak off from the rest of the people trying to get into the club, and they smoke some more marijuana. And then the trio, they go into the club and they...
I hope this story don't try to make weed sound bad. I'm just saying, because weed don't make you do none of that other stuff. Let's see.
Start having drinks, and they're partying, and they're dancing, and they're having this great time. And then at some point in the night, Cleet kind of abandons Shantae and T-Fry, and he goes off with another woman he met that night in the club, and he would actually leave the club with this other woman, and he would vanish for the night. And so around 2 a.m., when the club is getting ready to close, Shantae realizes that Cleet, the guy she was going to go home with, he's gone now. And so she's very frustrated, but she doesn't really have any recourse. And so she instead just goes and finds T-Fry and says, hey, let's just leave. And T-Fry, she's ready to leave too. And so the two women, they leave the club and they get out to Shantae's car. And
you don't know no T-Fries, do you? You gonna be hanging with T-Fry?
So he was killed by women?
We don't know. We finna see. We finna see. It might be the dude who left the club with some other girl who said, man, we need some, I don't know.
Both women are clearly under the influence. They're both definitely inebriated, but T-Fry believed she was less inebriated than Shantae was, and so she should drive. And so she told Shantae, get in the passenger seat, I'm gonna drive.
They ran him over. Hit and run, and they put his body somewhere else.
No.
Watch.
What are the odds of him being out?
Watch this.
Shantae gets into the passenger seat, T-Fry gets in the driver's seat, and she leaves the club and she drives all the way back to her apartment. When she parks at her apartment, she gets out and says to Shantae, hey, I don't mind getting in my car and kind of trailing you as you drive back to your home to make sure you get home safe, kind of like an escort. And Shantae, she just gets out of the passenger side and walks right around and confidently sits in the driver's seat of her car and tells T-Fry, nope, I'm fine. I'm gonna drive myself. I'll see you later. And then Shantae drove away. About an hour later, at 3:30 in the morning, T-Fry is in bed in her apartment when she gets this very frantic phone call from Shantae, who's totally hysterical. She's beside herself, and she's not really making any sense, but she's trying to get T-Fry to come over to her house. Now, T-Fry did attempt to figure out what was going on, but she just could not cut through the hysteria on the other side of the phone. And so eventually, T-Fry just thought, you know what? Clearly, it's something serious. I'm gonna go see what's going on. And so T-Fry, she leaves her apartment, she gets in her car, and she drives over to Shantae's house. And when she gets there, she goes up to the front door, she opens it up, she walks inside, and she finds Shantae in the kitchen straight ahead. She's totally hysterical, she's crying, and she's telling T-Fry that she didn't mean to do it, she's so sorry. And T-Fry's telling her, hey, calm down, what's going on? And Shantae says, look in the garage. And so T-Fry, she walks straight ahead through the kitchen to the door in the kitchen that leads into Shantae's garage. And she opens the door up, she turns the light on, and in the middle of the garage is Shantae's car. It had been parked nose in and lodged head first in the windshield on the passenger side of this car was Greg Biggs. When Shantae had left T-Fry's house an hour earlier saying she was fine to drive, on her drive home, she had barreled into Greg, who was on the sidewalk of some street, and the impact was so hard that Greg went flying through the windshield and got lodged halfway inside of her car. But the impact didn't kill him. It did almost cut his left leg off and break several bones in his body, but it didn't kill him. In fact, there was blood spatter inside of the car on the passenger side that indicated Greg was totally conscious and was trying to pull himself back into the car. There were these handprints on the inside of the passenger side door indicating Greg had been pulling on them. There was also these very small droplets of blood all over the seat indicating that Greg had been spitting up blood as he was trying to talk to Shantae or as he was trying to plead for help. But Shantae, instead of stopping her car and getting this guy help, she just kept on driving home with Greg lodged in her front windshield. Now keep in mind, where she hit him, she was less than a half mile from the fire station where her brother, her older brother, was currently on duty as a fireman. He was medically trained. He could have saved Greg's life. Also, the other firemen at the firehouse that she knew, that Shantae knew, they could have saved Greg's life. Also,
Mr. Ballen sound like he mad about this in real life. I feel you. I feel you, Mr. Ballen. That's so messed up.
You got to be insane to drive your car.
That's why you don't drink and drive, man. That's why you don't do it.
Somebody hanging. No, that would have made me instantly sober.
No, it don't work that way. And wow.
But that's crazy. Like,
that is insane, man. Let me know what y'all
gotta be
think about this in the
crazy.
comments.
You have to
I'm
be
serious.
crazy.
Do y'all know this story? Have any of y'all familiar with this? This is crazy, bro. I'm picturing her driving the car. Imagine you, him, and somebody just keep going with you in there.
They would.
And she just acting like,
she would
oh my
literally,
God, and still driving.
She had to be out her mind. She had to be.
Man, wow.
Then 6 miles away from the point of impact was the local hospital, where of course they could have saved Greg's life. And on her drive all the way back to her house with Greg halfway in her windshield, she would have passed by 9 payphones, where if you don't know anything about payphones, you can dial 911, so emergency services,
Free.
and it doesn't charge you anything. So Shantae at any one of these payphones could have called
This let me know this back in the days. No, but I'm
Yeah.
saying this back in the days.
medical personnel who could have
Gotta be
saved Greg.
payphone.
Also, let's not forget, Shantae was medically trained. She was a nurse's assistant and understood basic life-saving. But she did not use any of those resources. Instead, she just drove home. And when she got to her home, she drove her car with Greg in it into her garage. She shut the garage door. She gets out. And as Greg is literally moaning and probably pleading for help at this point, she just says, "I'm sorry," and then walks up to the door that leads into the kitchen of her home. She turns off the light in the garage, walks into her kitchen, and shuts the door behind her, trapping Greg.
Man, that's a nightmare.
That is a
Think about
nightmare.
a nightmare. Whoa.
In the garage in total darkness by himself. Then, after an hour of Shantae just being in her house with Greg slowly dying in the garage, she calls T-Fry. T-Fry comes over, she looks in the garage.
T-Fry got locked the hell up. Everybody got locked up because T-Fry's accessory now.
hour?
She accessory because that's the only way they could have moved that body to the bench, man. That's the only way they moved the body and they wrapped it up. Think about it. That's the only way
She
it
decided
happened.
to call someone after an hour.
An hour, man. She a monster, bro. She a monster.
Wow.
I don't give a damn what she was drinking. She could have been drinking butane. She could have been drinking Thunderbird, Salignac. She could have been drinking what's the name of it? E&J ethanol, 83,
She was on
87,
exit. She was on
93
X, right?
octane.
She took a pill, right?
She could have been on crack. She
Man,
could have been
that's
on
crazy.
Molly. She could have been on fentanyl. She could have been on everything. And that right there, bro, like that's crazy to me.
She sees Greg, and T-Fry's reaction is she just totally loses it. She panics, and she's screaming at Shantae, "Call 911, call paramedics, call the police." But Shantae refused. She didn't really give a reason,
would've
but
ran
she
out
just
the
said, "No, I
house."
can't." And then shockingly, T-Fry also does not call anyone. The two of them just turn off the garage light again and shut the door and leave Greg, and they hop into T-Fry's car and they drive to T-Fry's apartment where they sleep for several hours. And then when they get up that morning, they go back over to Shantae's house and they check on Greg, who's now motionless. And at this point, Shantae, she calls Cleet Jackson, the guy who she was supposed to go home with at the club but had abandoned her for some other girl. She calls him and says, "Hey, I have this huge problem. I need you to come help me." And so Cleet Jackson has no idea what he's walking into, but he goes to her house and he goes through her kitchen. She opens the door and he looks into the garage and he sees Greg in the window.
She got everybody getting locked up. She done got everybody. I'm putting cases on all you. I'm putting cases on all you. Oh, man.
And he's furious with Shantae because now he's gotten involved and he doesn't really know if Greg's alive and he doesn't really know what to do because he's on parole. And if he gets wrapped up in this, he'll go back to jail. But he ultimately decides he's just going to help Shantae because he believes at this point Greg is dead. So there's nothing they can do to save Greg. And so that night, Cleet gets in touch with his cousin, Tyrone, and the two of them, they go into the...
Why we always gotta have a cousin named Tyrone, man? I'm tired of this, man. Why, man? Please, man. Is you make Mr. Goddamn Ballin'? Is you making up these? Why we gotta have a Tyrone? This is too cliche, man. Why we gotta have a Tyrone? He on probation and we got Tyrone.
They called somebody.
Man, what is going on, man? We don't act like this.
the garage and they lay out a carpet next to the car, and they both kind of awkwardly apologize to Greg, who's just stuck in the windowsill, and they yank him out, they put him into the carpet, they roll him up, they put him in the back of one of their cars, and they drive to Cobb Park. They go through the gates, they make their way over to that bench, and they drop him on the bench. There had been some discussion about maybe destroying the body, burning the body, but Cleet felt strongly that they need to put his body out somewhere in public so at least his family can identify him and bury him. After his body was placed in the park, Shantae told Cleet and Tyrone and T-Fry not to tell anyone, and they said they wouldn't. And within a week of Greg's body being discovered, Shantae was back at Joe's Big Bamboo partying it up as if nothing had ever happened. But eventually, T-Fry would tell a couple of her friends, and before long, word had gotten out.
When you do something like that, you can't say, I know this is horrible advice, but that's how it works. You tell one person, it's over with. It's over. It's getting out, period. Nobody can. That's too heavy. It's too heavy to put on somebody. Like, that's too heavy, man. Like, that's real heavy.
And one person found out about it that was kind of in the network of these people, this woman, Miranda Daniels, and she really didn't like Shantae. And so she was the one who actually called the police and turned her in. And when the Fort Worth police followed up on Miranda's tip and they went to Shantae's house, they went into her garage, and there was her car with the windshield still obviously busted in from something being smashed through it. And there's blood all over the inside of the car. And there was some obvious attempts at trying to destroy evidence inside of the car. The seats had been taken out, some things had been burned, but none of the attempts Shantae had made had actually destroyed any of the evidence. During the trial, the medical examiner who had done the autopsy on Greg Biggs said his injuries would not have killed him right away. Now, he didn't know for sure how long he would have been alive, but he believed it could be as long as several hours or maybe even up to a whole day. And during that time, Greg was just trapped inside of this pitch black garage. No one's coming to help him, despite people coming in over and over again that he's pleading with to help him, and he would have been in excruciating pain. He's got several significant broken bones, his leg has been nearly amputated, he's got cuts all over his body, and he would have been trying to pull himself out of the windshield, and every movement he was making would have been sending the jagged pieces of metal and glass into his body. I mean, this is a drawn out, horrible death. And during the trial, every single medical professional and every single law enforcement official said, had Shantae brought Greg to get medical attention at any point in the first couple of hours, just basic medical care, he would have lived. And so his death is entirely because of Shantae's absolute indifference. T-Fry would ultimately, in exchange for full immunity, testify against Shantae, and Shantae would ultimately be found guilty of murder of Greg Biggs, and she would be sentenced to 50 years in prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 2027.
In cause number 037152D styled.
Man, I don't know if she should get out, man. I'm just being real, man. Because when you sobered up, even if, which is not it's still bad when you was drunk. It's already bad. But when she sobered up in the next morning, you ain't woke up drunk. You still didn't do nothing. Like, dude, and 2027 ain't that long. I don't wish nothing on nobody. I ain't got nothing to do with nothing. I'm just saying, man.
I would call the cops if I was a friend. Like,
that's crazy.
If I saw that you drove home with that body hanging halfway out in your car of somebody that you
I don't hang with people like that. Like, so I'm like you. Like, our friendship over right then.
I'm
anyway,
instantly gonna think you're gonna kill me too. Like, I'm running out the house.
Exactly.
I'm driving home and then I'm calling the police.
No, we gonna jump them. Soon as we see, like, yeah, we'll help you.
Oh no, I'm getting up out of there.
No, we gotta get.
You gotta.
Cause now we gotta get them on the time.
She had to have been crazy to do that.
She
like,
crazy
she
as
couldn't
hell.
have been in her right mind. So I would have instantly felt threatened.
Wow, let's see what the judge say.
State of Texas versus Shantae Juan Mallard. Verdict form is to count one.
No
We, the jury, having found the defendant Shantae Juan Mallard guilty of the offense of murder, assess her punishment at confinement in the institutional division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for a period of 50 years.
As for Cleet Jackson and his cousin Tyrone, they received 10 years and 9 years respectively for their role in the crime. During the victim impact statement portion of the trial, Brandon Biggs, Greg's son, he took the stand and he very eloquently told Shantae that he forgave her, and it seemed very genuine, and it moved Shantae to tears. And then Brandon looked out at the audience where Shantae's family was, and he said, you know, not only do I feel horrible for my family, but I feel bad for your family, Shantae, as well, because this crime has destroyed all of us.
They both
so that's going to do it, guys.
Man,
if you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please hold the like button at gunpoint and force them to walk through puddles in their socks. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly 1 or 2 video uploads. We are now selling merchandise like flannels and hats and sweatshirts and all sorts of stuff. If you're interested, go to shopmrballen.com. If you want to learn about upcoming deals and
Mr. Ballen, man, that was crazy. I like to say he has really dope content. Me and Naomi gonna try to do a day, maybe Wednesdays. Be sure to leave it in the comment. What is the episode that I haven't watched that you would like me and Naomi to check out? Leave it there, and we're gonna try to do it. Try to get a schedule on it. Should be tight. Let us know. And I think this was dope. What do you think about it, Naomi?
It was dope.
Wow.
It's the craziest story I ever heard.
Stay away from T-Fries, C-Lo's, Tyrone's, and make sure you be good.
Okay.
We out of this thing. Dope. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and check out my merch as well. Outro.
Yeah, you never flew private plane. Now your eyes open wide up in Paris. Yeah, you ain't never been from the coast on a yacht to an island.